With the power of Photoshop, you'll be able to design Barbie-inspired graphics in under 30 minutes. From creating stylish text effects to adding a touch of sparkle, we'll go through each step with a dash of creativity and a sprinkle of Photoshop magic. Let's dive into the world of Barbie and make all your graphics dreams come true. And so before we get into this tutorial, I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be listing some of my favorite Photoshop hacks that I like to use. I basically use them every time I use Photoshop, and I think they're really good to know. So let's dive in. The first thing we're going to do is create a new document that is 23 by 13 inches, 300 resolution, and CMYK for the color mode. Here I will just place a solid color background on my document. And go ahead and type out your letter. I will be using the font Thirsty Script. Link is in the description for all the assets that I use for this tutorial. Go ahead and change the size so that's about 412. And for the color, I will use a light pink color, which is EFDDEC. Now we're going to start off with some layer styles. Go ahead and double click, and let's start off with bevel and emboss. The style will be inner bevel. The depth will be 95. The size will be 81, and soften will be 16. Change your angle to 45. And your altitude will be 37. Now for gloss contour, we're going to change it to the second one in the second row. Now for highlight mode, change it to color dodge, and our color will be white. And change the opacity to 28%. For shadow mode, change it to linear burn, and the color will be AF86AA, a lavender color, and the opacity will be 14. Now we're going to click on contour and change it to the last one in the first row, and the range will be 66%. Now click on stroke and change the size to 8 pixels. The position will be outside, and our fill type will be gradient. Now click on gradient, and for our first color stop, change it to white. And then for our second color stop, it will be a purple color. And I'm using 74426E. And now I will select my previous color stop and place it again on my gradient bar and just repeat the same process. Now let's add an inner shadow. Change the blend mode to multiply, and the color will be purple. I am using 926F8E. Well, kind of a muted purple. And the opacity will be 34. Your distance will be 0 pixels. Your choke will be 9. And your size will be 79. Now we're going to add an inner glow. Change your blend mode to screen. Opacity should be 100, and the color should be white. Your choke should be 24. Your size should be 59. Change your range to 100%. Now let's add a satin layer style. Change your blend mode to color burn. And we're going to change the color to a hot pink. I'm using C9489A. and the opacity will be 47%. Change the distance to 112, and the size will be 207. Make sure invert is unchecked, and we will select the fourth one in the first row. Now let's add a drop shadow. Change your blend mode to multiply, and the color will be a deep purple. I'm using 8D3B83, and the opacity will be 73. Change your distance to 0, and your spread will be 8. And change your size to 24. And for a contour, select the second to last one in the second row. And now go ahead and duplicate this layer, and take your copy layer and remove the effects to this layer. Change the color to E13E96. Now this goes right into my first Photoshop hack, where you will learn how to make a 3D text using motion blur. And arrange your second text layer so that it's a little bit off to the right. Now convert this layer to a smart object. And now we're going to add a stroke layer style. Reset to default and change the size to 250. The position should be center. And change the color to E13E96. And now we're going to add a motion blur. Change the angle to -46 and the distance to 251. And that's how you create a 3D text effect using motion blur. Now put this second letter B in a group, and we're going to add a bevel and emboss layer style to this group. Change the depth to 157. The size should be 68, and soften should be 12. Change the highlight mode to linear dodge add, and the color will be a very light pink color. I'm using E4B7D5. And the opacity will be 100%. Now for shadow mode, change the color to DA4598. Change the shadow mode to color burn, and this will be 100% as well. Now we're going to add a contour. Select the third one in the second row and change the range to 100%. Now let's add an inner shadow. Keep it the same color, but change the opacity to 19%. Change the size to 250. And now we are done with our first Barbie graphic. Now we're going to move on to our next section, where we create a very sparkly inspired Barbie style text effect. Now here I'm going to type out Barbie Land. For the letter B and the letter L, I'm going to continue to use Thirsty Script for my font, but change the size so that it's 113. And then for the rest of the letters, I will be using P22 Mackinac Pro, which is a Adobe font. And like I said previously, everything will be linked in the description. And then also change the spacing between your letters to be about -20 for the serif font letters. And also keeping the very light pink color. Now we're going to double click this letter and we're going to add a bevel and emboss layer style. Change the style to pillow emboss, and the technique will be chisel hard. Change the depth to 126, and the size will be 59. Change soften to 0. Now for highlight mode, we're going to change this to color dodge. And our color will be white, and the opacity will be 28%. And then for shadow mode, change it to linear burn, and the color will be AF86AA, which is a kind of dull lavender color, and the opacity will be 14%. Now we're jumping into my second Photoshop hack, which is Photoshop layer styles allow you to layer more than one type of style. So for example, here I will be doing more than one layer of a stroke. Change the size to 40 pixels and the position will be outside. And change the color to DE078A. And now I'm going to add a second stroke layer. So change this size to 84 and the position to outside. And the color for this one will be a light blue color, which is 58CBF3. Now we're going to add an inner shadow. Change the blend mode to color dodge. And the color will be a hot pink color. I'm using DE078A. And the opacity will be 93%. Change the size to 21. And then go ahead and click OK. Now go ahead and open up your sparkly texture and apply a black and white adjustment layer on top and convert it to a smart object so that you can merge the layers. And go ahead and give it a name. And then drag it over into your document, over your text, and resize it so that it's a bit smaller. And then right click this layer and create clipping mask. Now we're done with this section of the Barbie graphics. Now we have 2 more to go. And so now in this new section, I am going to duplicate the text from Barbie Land because the Barbie World text uses the same fonts. So go ahead and edit your text so that it says Barbie World. And place it so that it's stacked one on top of each other. And go to Edit, Transform, Skew, and skew it on one side. And so here I am going to apply some effects to the Barbie world. It's going to be a bit similar to Barbie Land, so some of the settings are not going to change. Now this flows into my third Photoshop hack, which is copying layer styles. It's super easy. All you have to do is right click, copy layer styles, and then select the layer you want the layer style to be placed on, and then right click that one and paste layer style. It's so quick and it's super easy. Now I'll place Barbie World in its own folder and give it a name. Double click this layer and apply a drop shadow. Change this blend mode to normal, and the drop shadow color will be this hot pink color. I am using E0058C. The opacity will be 100%, and the angle will be 129, and make sure you uncheck use global light. The distance will be 87, and the size will be 0. And then select the very first one in the first row. And then click OK. Now pop on over to Illustrator and copy and paste the label. And place it right underneath your Barbie World text and resize it so part of the text is going outside of the label. Double click the label layer and apply a stroke. The size will be 53 and the position will be outside. And then the color I'm using is E0058C. Now we're going to undo everything that we did previously in the glitter layer so that we can access the pink glitter. So bring it on over into your document and of course resize it and rename it. So now we're going to get into our last and final section, and we're going to create our very last graphic. Take your Barbie text and duplicate it and move it on over to the side. So here what we're going to do is we're going to use the font Thirsty Script for all of the text, and also change the font size for its to 79. And then we'll duplicate this layer again and we'll use the word Barbie for the next one. And then this font size will end up being 129. And then for our last word, we are going to change this size so that it's about 82. Now place all 3 of your layers within a group. Rename your layer to keep everything organized, and now we're going to add a drop shadow. We're going to basically leave everything the same, and now we're going to place this group within another group. And here we are going to apply a stroke. Change the size to 55, and the color will be black. Now we're going to pop on over to Illustrator, and we are going to grab our Barbie outline. Copy and paste it and place it behind your text. Apply a cover overlay, and I'm going to use a very light pink color. I'm using E7, D2, E3, and then I will also add a stroke layer. The size will be 55, and the color I will be using is black, and then click OK. Now pop back on over to Illustrator, and in Illustrator we're going to grab one of the plaid graphics. And we're going to copy and paste it on over. And place it on top of the doll. Double click this layer and change the color overlay to ED1982, and we're going to change the blend mode to hue. And then make a selection from the thumbnail doll and then create a mask from it. Now jump back on over to Illustrator, and I'm going to select this heart here, but before I copy and paste it on over to Photoshop, I'm going to fill it with the color black. And here I'm just using the pen tool to go around the heart, and then I will end up selecting the Pathfinder to merge these layers together. And place it at the top of the ponytail. And double click this layer and change the color overlay so that it's a bright pink color. And then we're also going to add a stroke to this layer as well. Change the size to about 50. Now we're going to pop back on over to Illustrator, And we're gonna select one of the flares, the little spotlight flares, and then copy and paste it and add it to the top of the heart. And that is how you create Barbie graphics in Photoshop. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and also you can keep honing your design skills by checking out some of these other helpful videos on the screen. See you next time.